So Dean, over to you to kick us away.
JP, I'm actually having a really nice time being up here in Wangaratta for the PM team. So all you guys locked down in Melbourne, get in that car and go when you can. It's a good feeling driving out. But one of the most important thing is you guys are coming up to Christmas. You've had an amazing year, and also with so many changes. But what we need to focus on is bringing it home for the next 60 days. And let's make this Christmas the very best Christmas you've ever had, professionally, family, emotionally. So JP, I know we've got some things to talk about it, and I know some things we need to do, but I'll leave that up to you, mate.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Dino, and great to see you in the great northeast there in Wangaratta. Literally an incredible team that's joined the O'Brien family. As a part of our conversation today, team, we're going to make sure that we have a phenomenal session. So let's get in there and really make sure that we're absolutely playing at our best. As a part of that, let's get our thumbs up. Are we ready to jump into our property management training session today? We good to go? Mia's playing hard to get. Literally the thumbs are up. Okay, great. We are good to go. Awesome to see that enthusiasm, Sue. We're going to really jump into this session and make sure that we have a great session today. A couple of things that I like to think about inside of that property management space. This is all about you making sure that you can perform at your very best. We're going to spend a bit of time on that today, and then how we actually go to serve our customers in new and more powerful ways. As a part of that, in a property management perspective, what you want to be thinking about a lot is this whole idea that first of all, you've got to be good, then you can spend the time on being different. And this is a problem for a lot of people in business and in life. They're all trying to be different as opposed to just being really good at what it is that they do. Now, no matter what role that you play, whether or not you're in our leasing team, our BDM team, our property management team, our administration, operations, or maintenance teams, it's really important that you think, what do you need to do to be seriously good at that? And then be different in a way that really matters from a consumer's perspective. Now, as a part of this whole idea today is about really getting into this position that you think, hey, what are the skills that I've got to do to make sure that I can go to perform at my absolute best? Now, in order to do that, I like this whole idea. There is a big difference between what we go to call the knowing versus the doing gap. Now, the knowing thing is about what are all the things that we already know, but then what are the things that we actually need to do? And I love that whole idea because the knowing and the doing gap is important in business today. There's a lot of things when you go into training, someone says, yeah, I know that, but do I actually go and do that? Now, as a part of that, what I want to do is I want to spend some time on focusing about you. And the most important thing that we can do is actually getting really clear on what are the things that really matter for you. And certainly, what are the things that motivate? So imagine that we do this. We literally just get an A4 piece of paper. Let's do this now. On the left-hand side, we write down what are the things that really matter. And on the right-hand side, we write down what are the things that really motivate you. Now, you need to know yourself better than anyone else. I write down the things that matter to me: having great health, having great relationships, being in a great home, making sure that I've got some financial stability, making sure I'm in a position that I feel safe. Also, what matters, having a great job and purposeful work, meaningful work to go to do, and most importantly, creating experiences for phenomenal memories on what we can go and achieve in life. What motivates? Seeing a great sunrise, seeing a great sunset, listening to some good music, being in a position I can spend some time with some good friends and family, seeing a great movie, all of these things, making sure I can go to a restaurant when they reopen from tomorrow. So this whole idea is about getting really clear for you about what are the things that matter, and certainly what are the things that motivate you. And if you can get that right, only do the things that are on the what's matter list, and only do the things that are on the what motivates list. So literally for me, watching the news doesn't matter, nor does it motivate. Being involved in social doesn't matter, nor does it motivate. Getting angry on social media, does it matter? Absolutely not. Does it motivate? Absolutely not. So our skill here is about getting some definition about who you are and what you're all about. So you might remember there was a very famous TED talk delivered by a gentleman by the name of Simon Sinek, and it was called Start With Why. And he had this whole conversation that you've got to find out your why. And I find a lot of people kind of walking around and getting lost and feeling even worse because they don't know what their why is. Whereas what I prefer to do is to get some real clarity about some definition. So who are you and what are you all about? So I get to think about that. I love doing the real estate training piece and helping real estate agents and property managers to be phenomenal around what it is that they do. Then off the back of that, I've got a real passion around motorbikes. I love travel. I love the adventure and creativity. I love design, and I love being in a position that can help people out of difficult situations to get into a better space. And so literally, if you don't find me over here doing the real estate training space, then you'll certainly find me in these other locations. And that's a really interesting space to play from, because when you've got definition about who you are and what you're all about, you know what your default activities are going to be if you're not in a position that you're doing your role inside of the property management service line. Now, today we're going to have some good conversations about it. And really, this is that whole idea of what's going to set you up for success. We will see the world change. We are now moving into what we call a transitionary phase of actually living with the virus. So as a part of that conversation, as we go to live with the virus, there's a whole new way that the world operates. And the thing that is literally going to set you up for success is making sure that you have got a phenomenal routine that ultimately allows you to win. As a part of that conversation, this is about making sure that you get clear about what actually makes a great day. Now, Ray Dalio wrote a phenomenal book called Principles. In it, what he said you should do is get yourself in this whole idea that you're very, very clear about why you do what you do and why it works. So I have that look on it. I think, okay, have a look at the best day that I've had in a week. What made that day so good? And then how do I go and replicate more of that? If I look at a day that wasn't so good, what were the things that just weren't right around that? And this is what I've learned very clearly about the things that actually help me the most. The first key thing is I go to bed early, because if you go to bed early, you can wake up early. Once you wake up early, being in a position that you spend that first hour of every day on you, on your body, on movement, literally being in a position, whether or not it's doing some yoga, whether or not you're doing some stretching, going for a walk, going for a run, taking the dog out and about, whatever it is that you do, but doing something so that you can be a better you for you. And this is an important part, because once I do that, spending some time with friends and family, making sure I have a great breakfast, and then being in a position that I can jump in the car and go to the office, so to speak, and come back into my own home at sometimes, and being in this position that then I can get my meetings and to work in some really powerful 45-minute sessions. So I might spend 45 minutes, for example, on dealing with maintenance issues, 45 minutes on dealing with new tenants, 45 minutes on dealing with our existing landlords. Whatever it is, you've got to make sure that you work in purposeful moments of 45 minutes and then a little break. 45 minutes again, a little break. 45 minutes again, a little break, and then you're already heading to lunch. And this is what we've now learned. We're moving into a new world, which is called a work anywhere digital environment. And in that work anywhere digital environment, you need to make sure that you can work anywhere. And if you think about it, that's what we've already been doing throughout this hybrid situation. Now, in this transitionary phase, we're going to shift again to moving back into workplaces, what that's actually going to look like, moving away from the home environment, being in a position that we've really used those digital tools. And are we at the point that we're ready to rip out the printers and the photocopier from the office, because we now do everything in that digital world? Now, as a part of that conversation, when you find out what works for you, how do you do more of it? So I've found that if I've got a consistent time, having breakfast, lunch, and dinner, then I actually perform at my best. And more importantly than ever before, that if I'm really working to that particular routine, that I know that I'm going to be playing at my best as well. Now, as a part of that conversation, you've got to work your calendar. Your calendar is the secret to the life that you want. And what I get you to do is I get you to put your health things in there first, put the family things in there next, and then go and put the work things in there. Now, work plays a massive part of our identities. It gives us this whole thing of achievement, it gives us this sense of what we're working towards. And most importantly, it allows us to have real purpose and meaning and context. And this is what I want you to start thinking about, is that we've got to move into a new powerful era that we work these calendars and put safe boundaries around, so then we can go to perform at our best. Now, one of the conversations that we've been having a lot about is that literally a lot of us have been running on adrenaline and cortisol over the course of the last 18 or so months. Now, what is adrenaline? It's basically naturally produced in the body by the adrenal gland. And what it is this little chemical that literally, when we get into a fight or flight type response, that we can respond quickly. So let's say if you're driving a car and all of a sudden you see a car coming at you, you've got to quickly swerve to get out of the way. That adrenaline goes in rushedly into the bloodstream. And as it rushes into the bloodstream, bang, the heart rate goes up. Our senses come on, and a huge surge of energy comes into your body to get around that particular issue. Now, interestingly enough, as a part of that, what actually happens is that we become adrenaline junkies. We love signing leases. We love signing management authorities. We love getting that next maintenance item completed. But when we do all of that, that becomes a bit of a challenge, because when we get off adrenaline, the next drug that comes into the body is what we got to call cortisol. Now, cortisol is the stress drug. And literally, when you run on the stress drug, you get touchy and petulant and easy to upset and aggro, and you quickly bite back when you shouldn't. And the secret is we've been using these short-term drugs inside of our bodies to be in a position that we can perform with what is now a very long-term crisis. So this is that whole conversation. We've got to think very differently about the importance of really looking after our energy, what we're doing in the physical energy sphere around our nutrition, better known as our diet, what we eat, what we're doing around our physical stuff, around our exercise, for stress release and building basic muscle mass, but also too what we're doing to make sure that we're getting high quality sleep so then we can wake up refreshed. And how good does that actually feel? Then after that, after our physical, we then go to have a look at our mental energy. That's really built by having a couple of things in play, working a little 45-minute focus session to just do that very specific thing. Being in a position that you write a task list out on all the things that you need to get done for the day, and also too making sure that you've got great meeting agendas so that when you turn up to your meetings, they're absolutely running at to speed and to time. We then go and have a quick look at our emotional health, our emotional energy. That's boomed by having great relationships around us, but it's also boomed by listening to some great music and feeling good about what it is that we do. Once we've done that, we then need to make sure that we've got some goals, and that's our values energy, right? What are the goals that we want to go and achieve and the things that are ultimately going to make us feel great? Now, if you're in a position that you think about that, what are the things that motivate? What are the things that matter? How am I going with my physical, mental, emotional, and ultimately my goals as an energy source? Then that will change the entire way that you think, which changes how you feel, which changes how you act. Now, this to me is a really important conversation because the property management service line inside of O'Brien's is undergoing a really significant transformation. And I want to talk to you about the power of transformations. This is that whole idea that literally Maccas, they had to change everything during the course of the pandemic. People couldn't come in for in-room dining. They had issues with people being able to make orders. Then all of a sudden they had all of these competitors that were all of a sudden getting more share of wallet because they were able to deliver their particular food to them faster than Maccas could. So what Maccas did is they said, look, we're going to literally go on this task that over the course of the next 12 months, they want to move to 100% digital ordering, whether or not you're in store or out of store on an iPhone or an Android device. They wanted to move to improve their drive-through experience, and they got very, very focused on improving delivery. Now, interesting enough, they started building McDonald's stores without branding with 7 or 8 lanes there for Uber and Deliveroo and all of those people to drive through. And they literally turned Macca's from a $1 billion delivery business into a $4 billion delivery business in the course of the last 12 months. Now, this gets me to think a little bit differently about what we do inside of our property management business. What are our 3 things that we're going to do to significantly change the game? Is it, for example, that we're going to make sure that we're seriously good at digital in how we got to handle every single part of the transaction? Whether or not it's chasing arrears, whether or not it's statements with landlords, whether or not it's our landlords portals, whether or not it's the conversation around how we got to do routines and what we got to do with maintenance. Are we going to move into a position that we're going to significantly change the way that we go to do our sourcing of great tenants, but also to our sourcing of great clients? And are we going to shift how we go to work with our existing landlords? Really getting clear about who are the landlords right now that wish to grow their portfolio. Now, you might not have thought of this, but if you've got a landlord who's got $1 million property, this year, over the course of the last 9 or so months, they've actually had around a 16% increase in the price that that property would sell for, better known as capital growth. That means their $1 million property is now worth $1,160,000. That extra $160,000 of equity they've just been gifted by a good market is now well and truly the deposit that they may well need to be able to go and buy their next investment property at $800,000. There's the 20% deposit done just like that. So many of your landlords may not actually be aware that they've had such a significant growth in their equity, which now means that it's substantially changed their purchasing power to be able to go and buy another investment property. So maybe we've got to get really good at making sure that our property management team, working with our BDM team, or potentially what I now call them, our property management growth specialists, to assist our landlords in growing their particular portfolio, but also too about helping to identify if landlords have got something to sell in terms of their principal place of residence and introducing that sales service line so we have an incredible collaboration community in the way that we go to do the work. Now, as a part of that, this is about getting really clear inside of your pods, inside of what you're doing in the business, about what are the functional roles that you play, what are the swim lanes that you're in on a day-to-day basis. So we've actually got someone who's very clearly in the functional lane of looking after the arrears, and someone who's looking after the maintenance, and maybe someone who's looking after onboarding new landlords as an example. And this is a great time to rediscover that, to work closer with your specific team so that you can go and play at your absolute best. Now, one of the big things that we're very focused on is empowering people. And at McDonald's, for example, the 14-year-old decides whether or not the fries should go out. And so we want to try to make sure that we've got that decision power filtered right the way through so that everyone inside of the organization feels confident to be able to make as many decisions as possible. And this is the whole movement away from the leader-follower model to something that we go to call the leader-leader model. Now, when we first start out, the leader-follower model is very much the way that business is run. I am thou leader and thou shalt follow. And the interesting conversation about that is you keep on coming to me going, Josh, can we do this? Can I do that? Can I ring that tenant? Can I say this? As a part of that conversation. The problem with that is after a while, the leader gets pretty tired and massively exhausted, as do you, always having to ask for permission or ask questions. And what we want to do is we want to move into what we go to call the leader-leader model. So I want to teach you today about leadership and what you can do to become a phenomenal leader with people. What would actually happen if you say, okay, great. When someone comes to you with a question, they say, hey, Josh, what do you think I should do around ABC? And I might say to them, I don't know. What do you reckon you should do? And they might come back to me and say, well, Josh, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. No, if I wasn't here, what do you reckon you'd do? Oh, Josh, I'd probably do DEF. Okay, well, that's a really interesting conversation because that's exactly what I would do. And you no longer have to ask me that question because you know exactly what to do in these situations. Now, if, for example, their solution around DEF wasn't actually the example that we needed or the solution, and we say, hey, that's really interesting insight. But have you considered GHI? Oh, no, I haven't, Josh. I think I'm going to do that. Okay, well, that's a great way to think about it. And this is the lesson that is in leadership. It's about helping people to develop their own initiative so they know what to go and do next. And this could be one of the 3 things that you choose to be able to have your business, your service line significantly adapt to the new conditions that are ahead as we start to rejoin the global community, as we start to rejoin the rest of Australia, and also rejoin going to a physical location for us to actually do our work. Now, this is interesting because you can't just expect that people are just going to work well together. What you've got to do is you've got to make sure that you actually get it out in the open. And this is what I'd really encourage you with your teams, with the people that you get to work with, around answering 4 really simple questions. You get the best out of me when? I love this question. When do you get the best out of me? You get the best out of me when I'm clear about what you need me to do, when I have clarity about the timelines and the expectations, when I've got all of the resources that I need in order to be able to go and do my work. You get the worst out of me when? Well, you get the worst out of me when you're not clear, when you bully, when you're in a position that you don't say the right things, when you don't communicate as a part of that conversation. But you can count on me to absolutely perform. But what I need from you is X, Y, Z. Now, this is something I'd love you to do in your teams, in working together, either in your pods or in your offices, inside of that property management service line, that we actually spend some time not guessing how we're going to communicate, not guessing about how we get the best out of people, but instead getting very real and very specific around those specific examples. And this is such an important part because we've got to get you to start to think that property management is about the leadership position and leading people through challenges, particularly all of our tenants and certainly all of our landlords. And as a part of that, are you actually communicating well? And we're going to give you a little example on that today just to refresh your memory. But communicating well is about making sure that we've got real clarity in what it is that we're saying. Are you optimistic in the face of uncertainty? That passion, that energy to want to return back to the workplace because we know how important it is to be around our peers, to rejoin our O'Brien family. And most importantly, as a part of that conversation, that we can be working with people to feel really confident about the future. And also, too, bringing in that new talent. Could you imagine being a new property manager or a new BDM or a new leasing person starting to work inside of the business having never actually physically meeting the people that you work with on a day-by-day basis. Making sure that you're providing good quality guidance and direction to your tenants on what to do next, to your landlords on what to do next, and certainly in making sure that we're onboarding new clients so we don't have any challenges as they come to be our new future customer. What do people need immediate answers to? Never leave someone in the lurch. Make sure that people have got absolute clarity about what they need next and that you're in a position that you can get them moving fast so that you're not a roadblock in the workflow. And ultimately, where you can focus your efforts and your attentions to better support people right now. Now, as a part of that, you've got to make sure that you get really clear about the things that are in your way of achieving your goals and seeing whether or not someone else can have a third-party perspective to change the way that ultimately you go to operate. Now today, as I love that, it's about us improving the quality of our owner communication. And that's that whole conversation that, you know what, it's from that book called Meetings Suck, I Didn't Say You Were Beautiful. Just always remember that when you put something in writing, people are going to read it in different ways. So whether it's on email or SMS or WhatsApp or any of the above, be very, very careful. So I love that whole idea. I didn't say you were beautiful. 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 And the interesting conversation is that every single time that I change the way that I pronounce some of those words, the emphasis that I give them, it changes the entire meaning of that particular sentence. So this is that whole idea. Imagine that you turned up at work and you had a bit of a conversation. Your director said, oh, please don't park there. That's where I park. And all of a sudden that got you a bit offside. And you came into the office and there's an email from your director saying, hey, congratulations on that new authority, or congratulations on being able to fix that particular issue on a maintenance item. But how do you read it? Congratulations about your new authority on Jane Street. And this is the whole conversation that you mistook it. So for me, I'd rather pick up the phone and ring someone or do a Zoom meeting as a part of that conversation to connect with that other human being and resolve the issues that are in play, rather than going backwards and forwards on email. Now, email to me is a great confirmation tool. It's the tool that we use so that we've got a legal trail around those particular items. But this is about making that decision to really go all in the way that we go to perform. You've got to make it easy for people to deal with you. We're operating in a new environment. You book a hairdresser this way, you book a restaurant this way. Why can't I make sure that I can book my property manager in for a review of my portfolio, or book in for a time to be able to speak to someone as our property management growth specialist? Things like Calendly, let people book in appointments directly into your calendar, full automation with things like Zoom links if we're operating in that digital environment. And this is such an easy space for you to make sure that on the bottom of your emails that people can literally click a link and choose a time to be able to connect with someone in your new business environment or with their existing property manager to be able to talk through specific issues, or to be able to book in their reviews, or even to be able to schedule their routines in a particular building. What I love about this is that this is the whole conversation, that we're moving the business to the future and operating more powerfully inside of that digital environment. Communication now is multi-medium. We send communication via SMS, via email, via WhatsApp, via phone, via Zoom. So don't just get stuck in one lane. Think differently about how you can operate and play with people at a much more important space. And remember that to people now, accessibility wins. That ability to be able to send an SMS, that ability to be able to connect, to be able to make a quick phone call, even if it might be after hours, because they've actually asked for permission to do that. And what you've got to think about is that what actually is your client's communication preference? Are they in a position that they love an SMS, an email, or a WhatsApp? Or are they in a position that say, hey, look, just send me a quick text if you need me and I'll call you? And ultimately, where is that recorded? Does that sit inside of our property management software so that we can be in a position that we know exactly what to do? And particularly if someone else has to take over the management of that particular property inside of your portfolio. Now, why I love all of this is that these are all the areas where there's friction. These are all the areas where we can also have excellence in what it is that we do inside of O'Brien Property Management. What do we do to make that entry experience for a new tenant phenomenal? How do we make exits easy and frictionless? You know, that whole conversation of a recommendation of a panel of cleaners that can do an exit clean on a property so a tenant's not having to go backwards and forwards all the time. How do we make lease signing in the digital world a great experience? And what about routines? So they can actually be done in a way where maintenance items are actually addressed or discussed as opposed to not being brought up or literally leaving people in a position they've got to try to find out how to work with it? What do we do to make sure that literally arrears are actually handled in a really powerful way and get ahead of the conversation? And this to me is one of the most powerful things to learn in negotiation. Never back yourself in a corner, instead give people options. So Mr. and Mrs. Owner, this is the particular challenge that we've got. There's probably 3 or so options here. We've got option A, option B, or maybe there's a third option, option C, that I'm not yet seeing. What are your thoughts on how you'd like to see this handled? Let's go and have that conversation. And this is important because after those arrears, it's also making sure that we've got phenomenal supply management and the way that we got to work with suppliers so they feel that they've got a great connection with us at O'Brien. As a point of that, we need to start thinking about some of the areas where we can play at our best. With new landlords, it's about onboarding. How are we going to handle those things in conflict resolution? Dean, I've got to make a call today. This isn't the easiest call to make, but the reason for my call is this. And as soon as I say that, he already knows to brace for that potential challenge. So then that way you can work together to provide better advice around how to fix that particular situation. Those existing landlords' relationships, by adding value, every single time we see something that's listed, sold, or leased that is similar to theirs, how do we actually make sure that we can advise them of that, particularly if our landlords have seen that 16% increase in the total value of their particular portfolio? That BDM and being able to make sure that we generate great new business, but also too managing stress. Now, I wrote a great email about this today. Before we called it mindfulness, coloring in the coloring in book, we used to call that managing stress. So what do we do when we hit a highly stressful event, and how do we handle that quickly? Let me show you a quick way to deal with it. Maybe try it. What we do is just a quick breath in, hold that breath for just a little bit, and then a nice long breath out. And it changes our entire body physiological to give us some time to think through the situation before we act. And that's a really important conversation as a part of getting you to be able to make sure that you can go and play at your best. Now, let's not forget, as we come to summarize, that the best people in the business really understand what we do inside of the property management service line. We're in the business of maximizing rental return. How do you maximize rental return? You get a higher rent. You get consistency of rent over the total value of that particular asset if they sold it. We do that by minimizing vacancy. How do you do that? You get great tenants on longer lease terms. We align lease end dates to where there's peak tenant demand. We reduce risk for our clients. Risk around making sure that they do have the appropriate insurances in play. Risk around fire, safety compliance, tribunal and paperwork. We are the organisation that dots the I's and crosses the T's. Then, in addition to that, making sure that we're proactive on CapEx. What's CapEx? That's capital expenditure. You see, when you go to do a routine, it's not just about walking through going, oh yeah, no. How's the tenant? Are they making their bed? No. It's about identifying, what, if we repainted that kitchen or fixed that splashback or made that decision to change that, then that would ultimately allow us to charge an extra $10, $20, $50, $100 a week, which would get a better return for our client, which would help them to maximize that rental return. But also too, making sure that we're good and quick and responsive on emergency maintenance before it becomes a substantial issue. We're in the business of maximizing asset value. How do we do that? By maximizing rental return, making sure there's depreciation schedules in play. What's depreciation? Well, property is brand new, but over its life, there are things that need to be replaced. New carpets, new kitchens, new hot water services. And when we do that, the government allows you to write that off on your tax. Also making sure that we help them to maximize that saleable value and that we offer to people that we actually can be the property management solution that is set and forget property management. Basically, hand us the keys. We'll see you back in 10 years' time. Turn up to the property and you'll find it in better condition than you gave it to us. And this is important because what we've got to do is that we've got to make sure that we go to reduce the risk as much as possible. And in reducing that risk, we've got to make sure that we're absolutely playing at our best. And to me, that's simple things like making sure that when we see a property is coming up and is going to be vacant, what are we doing to get that asset positioned to get it leased quickly? That tenant selection process. What are we doing to make sure for all of those tenants that may need to move because they need something bigger or smaller, how are we aligning them with other properties that are coming to market? Our paperwork compliance piece, our repairs and maintenance, the insurance and fire. what we do around lockdown environments, and also to how we have our management team in play to really make sure that we can be playing at our best. What do we do at O'Brien's? What's our best practice in re-signing leases, knowing when to push ahead with a rent increase and when to literally know when to hold? And that's that old school story. You've got to know when to hold them, and you've got to know when to fold them. As a part of that idea, how do we go to build trust? We operate in a new environment. And in this trust relationship, how do we become the trusted service provider for our landlords? And that's built through high quality relationship in everything that we do. And it's about making sure that we pick up the phone, that we literally get face to face, even if it's via Zoom, and connect. It is the ultimate thing that allows us to have great customer relationships. We now live in what we go to call the subscription economy. We spoke about this earlier this year, about what do we do to attract, maintain, and retain our subscribers, better known as our landlords. And the problem is that most of our attention is usually at the squeaky end of the wheel. Those one or two landlords that are painful, the one or two tenants that are painful, and instead we actually leave the people that are amazing out to pasture rather than literally making sure that we check in to see exactly where they're at. And that's that whole idea. If everyone's property prices has increased, how many of our landlords want to grow their portfolio, buy another investment property, allow us to trade into something that is a better property to represent? This is about us getting clear about who we are, what we do, and how we help. And understanding that in the new world that we're going to have objections. People are already going to say they're happy with their existing property management when we try to bring them across. But what would it take for us to have the opportunity to manage the property on your behalf? Could we be your backup property manager if anything ever happens? Or if I find you something to buy to add to your portfolio, would you allow O'Brien Real Estate the opportunity to manage it for you? This is such great conversations to change the way that we think and feel. We're going to have higher fees. We're not going to be the cheapest in the market. The cheapest in the market, well, literally, they don't even exist. Our job is to make sure that we learn as to why over 10,000 landlords make the decision every year to actually have O'Brien Real Estate manage their particular assets. This is understanding that the client wants and is matching that our specific service offering, and that we're in a position that we know why those 10,000 customers have made the decision to use us in the course of the last 12 months. We're all involved in nurturing the pipeline. To do that, set a time for when we follow up with people. Make sure that we let people know about properties that are listed, sold, and leased that could impact on their portfolio. Make sure that we check in with people who didn't even go with us to see whether or not they've had their routines done, because we win great business by making sure that we are proactive in our approach. Be good at what we do with rent increases. Develop an incredible O'Brien investor report about what's actually happening in market. Give people the opportunity to have a health check around their particular portfolio. I love this, literally a monthly video update on what's happening inside of property management and what they need to know, certainly as these conditions go to change. We need to make sure that we've got the highest level of professionalism with our routines, with our ingoings, and with our outgoings. We need to get good at digital signing for those lease agreements. We need to make sure that literally some firms are moving to physical tenant check-ins and checkouts, which includes a talk through of any cleaning requirements and answering any key questions with what they go to call their concierge team, who actually meet the tenants on site and hand them the keys when they actually move into that property that very first time. You need to believe in what actually makes us different, because you're in the position that you go to deliver it on a day-by-day basis. So Dean, I'm just going to stop there. I think that's a great way to stimulate some incredible conversation across our teams. Mate, one or two key things that you might have already picked up out of our session today. What are your thoughts?
JP, what a great session. I'm sitting here, obviously, with the Wangaratta team up there, and we're just working through and saying how much that transformation of property management is just the key, isn't it? That whole session, but I do love what you actually went down in the end. You know, said higher fees and different offering. I think that's the transformation, is actually not worry about fee fights, but actually have a different offering and work to that and understand why our clients choose us. And
yeah, interesting enough, Dean, there was a guy by the name of Jim Collins, right? And he wrote about this whole conversation in a book called Beyond Entrepreneurship, of the difference that either you become the role model or you're in a position that you're absolutely common enemy approached. And the common enemy approach is about literally wanting to fight the competition and wanting to battle in their space. And, you know, Dean, I was very much common enemy when I first started the training business, and I shifted within my first 12 or 18 months to trying to be the role model. And I genuinely feel, Dean, that there isn't a competitor that sits in my space around what we go to call deep integration, how we go to work with our clients, understanding of the service lines and the connection between those. And that when you play in a space where there is no competition, you're in a position that literally you're the best. And when you get to be the best, that means that literally you really understand why you do what you do. So Dean, let's jump to a couple of people. Who would you like to get some feedback from today on what they might have picked up out of the session?
Look, I'd actually like to go to Caitlin Valla, because she had quite an experience this week, and I think that was a great lesson for everyone. Caitlin, obviously we're going to talk about Frank. Do you want to sort of experience and that communication piece and how that affected you?
Yes, one thing I learned over that experience was to over communicate.
I think we've lost her, have we, JP?
Yeah, slight issue just on the connection there with Caitlin.
Definitely.
So, you want to just talk through that, Dean, on what you saw happen there?
Okay, guys, I'll tell you what actually happened. It was talking about
me?
We might,
yeah,
no, we're struggling, Caitlin. I'll explain what happened. We had obviously a tenant that was in a circumstance and a potential tenant and an application, and Caitlin learned the value of over communicating to that tenant, and it was an amazing experience, because Caitlin rang me up afterwards and said, "Oh my God, that tenant nearly made me cry when they approved it." And I said, not only did I get that, I got a text message from the tenant, and I also got a text message from a friend of the tenant saying, "Can't thank you enough for what Caitlin's done for us." And the power of that over communication and actually understand what the client want was absolutely excellent.
I think the big conversation here is, Dean, is that like literally how much of it do we create the fear rather than just getting on with it? And today, well, there were some really good skills that were just mixed into that conversation. It's like, hey, Dean, I've got to make a call to you today. It's not the easiest call to make, but the reason for me to call you is X, Y, Z. And, just see that up front. Or when you're presenting solutions and say, Dean, so there's maybe 3 ways we could handle this. We could do this, we could do this, or maybe there's a third option that I'm not seeing. And I love that, because that really invites the landlord or the tenant into the tent, so to speak, to be able to help in actually getting that right solution in play. Dean, who are some other people that we should put the spotlight on today for some things that they might have, or some things they might have picked up out of the session?
I'm going to go down to Helen at Cows, because it's good to see her back into the property management space online. And, we all know how valuable she is to the team down there, and we'd like to see what she took away from it. JP?
Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much for nominating me to speak today. Look, as you all know, I love hearing Josh speak. He motivates me a lot, and I carry it through, and hopefully all of our team does too. What I pick up from Josh is what matters and what motivates. That's a really important thing to run with. The notes that I took was routine wins. It really does. Once you've got a structured routine and you just stick with it, you end up doing what you come to work to do. Be good at what you focus on being good, focus on what you're good at, because then that makes us the best. And so then you don't have to worry about your fees. You've got self-confidence, and you just exude confidence to new clients coming in.
And I think, Helen, that's such an important point, right? Like, so many people just say, I do routines, but like literally, what does that even mean? Like, is the routine to check how the tenant makes their bed, or is the routine to identify potential capital expenditure or potential emergency maintenance that might need to happen to improve the sellable value of the asset? And you start talking like that, and people are like, where did she come from, right? Because, it's fresh and it's different. And I said to Dean, one of the big things that we've got to do is that, property management to me feels like, in a lot of businesses that they've been sucking in the same stale air for years. And what we need to do is we need to add fresh air to our conversations and freshen up how we talk about what it is that we do, because we've got to be passionate about what it is that actually happens. And all of you know exactly what I'm talking about when you go into a service situation, and we're starting to see that in Sydney as restaurants start to open, and people haven't served food in a restaurant for ages. And they're all of a sudden like, what do we do? And how does it, oh, you need a knife and fork for that, don't you? Yeah, let me get that. And you start to realize very quickly, what excellent service really does look like. Anna, we've got you there. Let's go to you. 1 or 2 key things you might have picked up in our session today.
Hey, Josh, thank you again for another amazing session. Always love listening to you. And like Helen, you motivate me so much. So thank you. I've got here working 45-minute focus, purposeful sessions. So I think that's key, absolutely, for getting through the day and just setting that routine again. Functional roles and swim lanes. I'm trying to focus on that myself. So that's going to be a big key thing for me. I love the working together questions and leadership questions. So I want to reintroduce that back into our team. Set and forget property management, become the trusted service provider for our owners, and the leader model, something I'm really working closely with Dean at the moment, actually, that leader model. So trying to win at that.
I love all of that. And, the big conversation for me is that, you are so good around what you do if you actually stay inside of that lane. And there's a great story, for example, about this, it's an old one, it's this adage about three bricklayers, right? So you walk up to the first bricklayer, say, hey, what do you do? Oh, I lay bricks. Go to the second bricklayer. What do you do? Oh, I build walls. Go to the third bricklayer. Hey, what do you do? Oh, I build cathedrals. And how you think about the work is therefore how you perform at that level. So if I say to you, oh, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm in property management. Geez, that sounds exciting. Not really. Like literally, how does that tell me that you show up every day? If someone says, hey, what do you do? I'm involved in asset management. I help to maximize the saleable value of rental properties on behalf of investors. I work in the largest asset class in all of Australia, which is literally 3 times the size of the entire share market and the entire superannuation industry in total. And that's ultimately what I do, is I help landlords to make better investment decisions around what they do with properties, how they manage them, proactive maintenance, to get them to good quality of capital expenditure, got to get tax depreciation. There's a ton of things I do. How can I help you? Like, that style of conversation shifts in how you actually go to think about it. Fraser, let's go over to you. Mate, we've got to have at least one male give some contribution. Mate, 1 or 2 key things you've picked up out of our session today.
I just love the way that paradigm shift from what we do. So we don't just collect rent and manage arrears and maintenance and those things. We maximise return, minimise vacancies. That whole shift in the way that we think about what we do. And I look at that not from what we actually do, but how the actual landlord will see what we do.
Mm-hmm. I think that's that whole conversation. It's all around experience, right? Just kind of changing that. Mel Bolson, we're going to go across to you. A lot of things in there for people about how you feel, how you make yourself feel, what you can do. I love that distinction today between mindfulness and stress management. For me, it's like mindfulness feels a little bit airy-fairy, and then I'm on a colouring in book, and it literally off the back of it, when I go over here to stress management, I'm like, well, what do I do when everything hits at that one point to just give me instant relief, to be able to pull back for a second, get some perspective, check in with some other people for advice before I then go and play out that difficult situation. What are your thoughts on some of those things today?
Yeah, absolutely, Josh. And routine, you said it best when before, and when you were running through some of those things, I was jotting it down myself, and always reminding yourself of, your routine, going for a walk. I know you love listening to good music, me too. If I don't have my music on in the morning when I'm getting ready, that sets you up for the day. All those little things, routine wins.
It's such an important part, right? So they used to call it ideal days. I never felt good about that. Ideal weeks, that made me literally shudder. But if I was in a position, I'd go, hey, what's a good routine? Dean will never get me at a training session at midday, will you, Dean? You've been trying for years, because I have lunch every day at midday. And he goes, you're so boring. And I'm like, mate, you know what? You might say that, but I'm also so consistent. And that's, I think, where the big difference is about really learning what are the staples. I had a dinner with a friend last night, and she said to me, Josh, what I've noticed in the last 16 years with you is just the consistency to keep on turning up. I never see you flat or negative or over it or burnout or exhausted or tired. Like, and you kind of think about that. Like, I'm tired of hearing people say they're tired. Like, literally, I'll give you an idea. Literally, go and have a cold shower, do that for 3 minutes and only have the cold water on, and tell me how you feel at the end of it. I bet you all the tiredness just zaps away from your body in seconds. And Dean, true or not, I've actually had you come to Queensland with me, go and see a guy by the name of Wim Hof, and forced you into an ice bath for 3 minutes straight to teach you the power of your ability to be able to renew. Is that a true story?
True story, JP, but a true story on consistency. And I suppose when you talk about doing something, I just went up there, had no idea who Wim Hof was, done a bit of study. All of a sudden, I've come home with cold baths and breathing exercises and feeling great. And you're absolutely 100% spot on, mate. And I think it goes back to the inputs and outputs of what we do every day about makes it great. I love what Mel said, whether it's music in the morning, whether it's the cold shower, whatever it does, whatever makes you feel great is what you should be doing.
So team, as we finish today's session, I'm going to get you to think about this. What do you do to quickly hit refresh when you need it? Is it a quick cold shower? Is it a quick call to a friend? Is it in a position you go and have a tea or a coffee, you get some sunshine, you have some water, you go get a quick juice, You know, is there just a bit of deep breathing? Is there something that you can do to perform at your best? We're going to get you a copy of today's recording, also going to get you a copy of the key slides. This is a great chance. I hope that it's been good use of your time on a Thursday morning. Let's get ready for freedom and living in the new world, a new era, a digital world where we get to work anywhere and go and make some great things happen. Team, lovely to see you all. Can't wait to see you face to face. Hopefully they'll let me out of the great state of New South Wales to go to the distant land of Victoria in the course of this next little bit. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you face to face before we end the year. Thanks, team. We'll see you soon. Cheers.
Bye.